So maybe, yeah, we can start. Does that work, Emma? Okay, so this is the culmination of our semester for the students. So I'm really excited to host the virtual visit today to the Museu da Maré, which is, that's my dad, my #1 fan. So he's with us too. So today I'm really excited to host this virtual visit to the Museu da Maré, located in the Maré Favela complex in the North Zone of Rio de Janeiro, where I've had a partnership since 2018. The Museu was founded in 2006 by a group of the first university graduates from Maré, who got together with other community members around the idea of creating a museum from objects that had been donated for itinerant exhibitions in Rio de Janeiro. So this year on May 8th, the Museu da Maré will celebrate its 16th year in this project that continues to bring together the past, the present, and the future, and to tell the story of place from the margins of the city. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Adrielly Ribas, museum educator at the Museu da Maré and researcher specializing in museum education. She received her doctorate from the Universidade Federal Fluminense in education. And in her research on museum education practices, she bridges the debates on popular education, museum education, memory, and history. She has worked at the Museu da Maré since 2012 and was previously at the Museu de História do Pantanal. So today we'll begin with the virtual visit of the Museu da Maré, with myself and Dr. Ribas narrating the visit. After that, we'll hear from Dr. Ribas on the shifts in the Museu da Maré's pedagogical practices during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as how the museum has eased back into in-person activities, especially with youth. Then we'll have questions from the audience, you all, my class, for Dr. Ribas about the museum and its practices. So I'm just
Hi, my name is Adrielly, how Thomas already said, and my English sometimes is not very easy to understand, so if I forget some words, I'm gonna ask Pamela to translate for me. So I'm gonna say sometimes some words in Portuguese, and then she translates for me, okay? And if someone don't understand what I'm saying, just say, and you can ask any questions that you want. You feel free to question something that you don't understand what I'm saying. So thank you, Pamela, for the invitation. Thank you, Emma, for making this possible. So we can start.
Great. So I'm gonna put on the video, Adrielly, and then start with the first narration, and I'll do the opening text, and then we can switch. So let me share the video. Oh, and also Adrielly, both of us finished our doctorates during the pandemic, so I just want to recognize it was very hard, but we did it. So yeah, this is kind of cool to be able to invite her after both becoming doctors. So let me share the screen. If I remember anything else. Okay. Can everybody see? Yes. Okay. So So this is the beginning of there's actually no sound. Adrielly and I are providing the sound. So I'm gonna read the orange panel to you in English. So this large orange panel with the welcoming text refers to the place of origin of most of the first residents of Maré. They came from the arid and dry regions in the interior of several states in the Brazilian Northeast. So it reads, "Welcome to the Museu da Maré. This is our museum. It's not a place to keep objects or worship the past. This is a place of life. If life is counted by years, days, and hours, on clocks and calendars, in this museum, life is told by seasons where nothing is finished, everything is being transformed. Past, present, and future coexist in the times of water, resistance, home, work, childhood. There are 12 seasons, like the 12 hours of the clock and months of the year. Seasons constructed from a place and life experience. Here, the residents had to make their ground. Over the waters, they raised their houses, anchoring the stilt homes. In this place, time was counted by the ebb and flow of the tide. Nets to the ocean, reclaimed land, hola hola, water spouts, bricks, rooftop decks, collective work. These are inheritances built by many people over time. Here, where so many only see violence, a new way to tell the seasons of the city is born. Starting from dialogue, exchange, and respect for cultural diversity, the Museu da Maré is an invitation to be part of constructing this new time." So the next, so here, right after this panel on the left, the visitor can see the space about the memory of the factory, reminding us that this building, before becoming a museum, was a naval industry factory where parts for ships were produced. And further ahead, which Adrielly will tell us about, the visitor encounters the first module of the exhibition, called The Time of Water. The different shades of blue are an allusion to the Guanabara Bay.
So before I start to talk about the time of water, can I say something about the panel really quickly? Can you stop the video, Pamela, a little bit? Yeah, thank you. I think this panel, he talked very clearly about the essence of the Museum of Maré, because he say the museum principal object is the ordinary life and the ordinary day of ordinary people. So it's not about big policy or public figures. It's about something relatable. It's when every people comes from around the world, come to Museu da Maré and can identify yourself, because it's about ordinary things of the day and the life of the people. So I think this association with the social museology is very clear in this text, because say about the not chronological themes that comes across our lives, right? So I think I think this panel I like very much. I'm very suspicious to say that, but I like very much of this panel, because he's is the essence of what we're about to see. So we can go now to the time of water. I don't know if I am being clear, if someone is hearing me. Everybody's can hear me, understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Thank you. So we can pass to time of water. So now we have some pictures in the time of water that show evidences of how the region was mangrove before of the occupations. So the main story that we're trying to show to the people is how the space, the territory changed so fast, and because of the population. So we have some photos of islands, and this island, for example, in the middle, and with other islands, they form a Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro. That is a university here in Rio de Janeiro that was built in the 70s by the government at the time. So here we say some house built of wood. This house is in Brazil we call palafitas. They mean this houses is above water. Como se diz acima da água, Pamela?
Like that, above the water.
Above water, I'm saying. So here we have the. Você pode pausar, fazendo favor, Pamela?
Claro.
Voltar para aquela imagem? Eu gosto muito daquela imagem.
Voltar.
Voltar para aquela imagem específica.
Essa aqui?
Yes. Thank you. So here in the image, we see a highway. So this highway is stopping the water. So the constructions of the highway dry the territory. So these houses of Palafita is no longer more in the water. So we have two ways to dry the territory, with the state intervention and the population intervention. So in this picture, we can see in the background, the university, and in the front, we see the slum, the favela da Maré. So you can move on. Thank you. Here we have the Israel Temple da Água is written time of the water. It's talking about the mangrove, the diversity of the plants and the animals, and how the aspect of the water is hard at the time, because they don't have como diz saneamento básico, Pamela?
Basic sanitation.
Yes, they don't have that. At the time, we're talking about in the 40s and until the early 90s. So it's very long time that people and the population don't have water in their houses. So this process make part of the ordinary day of the people. So can they live there? So make part of the cultura of the Maré. And Pamela is gonna show something, some objects that make part of the cultura of the Maré because of the water, because of the mangrove. See, this picture show the palafitas, this house, building of wood above the water. This type of house not exist anymore in the Maré. So you can see people using boats. The bridges of woods is very dangerous. The bridge, kids could fall in the water. So yeah. Pamela, you can stop in these pictures, please.
Made?
Yes, this one. You can stop there. Yeah, thank you. In this two images, you can see constructions they're very aligned, right? So very straight and in line with each other. That's the part of the state interference on the territory. And the rest was the population build their own houses. And como se fala aterramento?
Landfill or land reclamation?
Eu não
Land,
consigo entender.
land
Okay.
reclamation?
Yes, lanterns. So the population made that because almost the majority work in the civil construction. So they have the meanings, the knowledge to do so. And basically 80%, como te diz 80?
80.
80% was built by the population of Maré, but the others 20 definitely was intervention from the state. So this was the part in the superior part was when the intervention state brought some people from other areas of the Rio de Janeiro because of gentrification. So some areas with the beaches, very know about international for other foreign peoples. When we have Copacabana, Ipanema, these areas become so expensive, and the government take people from the lands of the region and take people from there and put on another place. So it's this area when Pamela is pointing right now. Is other favelas of Rio de Janeiro also was built in this way because government take some group of population from the houses and put in other places.
Adrielly, there's a question here from Luísa. Essas fotos foram tiradas por quem? É do Arquivo Público do Rio de Janeiro?
Elas são da Biblioteca Nacional do Rio de Janeiro.
They're from the National Library. Continua?
Pode continuar. Sorry. So in this area, we can see the change of territory also, because you can see above and up in the superior picture, you can see the past, and above you can see the present. So it's a lot of water. This part was made in the early 90s. Also a government project for popular habitation. So, and they take the earth from, como se diz abaixo?
Underground.
Underground. They take the earth from the underground of the water and put above. So they dry the mangrove, and that's how they build the houses after. They maintain the trees that you see in the picture. They still exist. They call Parque Ecológico da Maré. It's the ecological park of Maré, so it's still there, but the water, no. You can pass now. Thank you. another change of the image. So I was talking about the culture and then emerged because of the lack of water. In the case of potável, né? How to say potável?
Potable, right, guys? Potable water, like drinking water?
Yeah.
Drinking water. So they have water, but don't have drinking water. So this is rola rola. Is você pode explicar em inglês, fazendo favor, ou Pamela?
So fast. So this hola hola, which you all read about, it is a barrel, right? And it has tires around it. And so it was used to pull water through the streets. And I think there's a picture, right? And that's because, like, as Adrielly was saying, there was no, what did you guys say? Potable, how you say it? Potable water. And so people had to go collect water at a spigot, like, and then bring that back to their homes. So in the pictures that are here, well, here's a close up, right? And you can see how it's made out of the barrel with the tire around it. And then the big wire so that you can pull it. And these are other objects to collect water and other objects related to kind of the idea of plumbing also. And these are, some of them are actual buckets, some of them are cans. Like everything could be used to carry water. And in the pictures, you'll see some of that too. And there's the spigot. So this is the hola hola being used.
I like very much of that object because he's not original, but the person who did the object for the museum was a person who sells hola hola at the time. So the knowledge to how made the object that's important. So it's a way to see how not material patrimônio, how to say patrimônio in English?
Heritage,
not material heritage. Is important because the knowledge of the man who make this hola hola was possible to show how people brought water, drinking water, to home. So is como se diz torneira coletiva?
Like a collective spigot, I guess, or like a community spigot, maybe, right?
Yes, was a community a space that you can collect water to bring your home to cook and wash your clothes and take a bath. So a lot of people that come to museums say when they are kids, they have to that have this charge to use take the water to home. So one of the first people that occupied the land was fishermen. I think this is how to say pescadores.
Yeah, pescadores.
Yeah. Yes, fishermen. So here we have another example of not material heritage is the rede de pesca. How say rede de pesca?
Fishermen's nets.
Yeah, they make this by hand. So they use a little wood stick as a needle to make this rede de pesca. So how can I explain this? Eu vou explicar em português e aí você explica em inglês, tá?
Ah, pode.
Essa parte é mais complicada de eu traduzir. Então, eles costuravam à mão essa rede de pesca e depois ela era fervida em água com aroeira, a planta aroeira, para não estragar devido ao fato da água ser doce e salgada. Vou parar e você traduz.
Tá. So, qual era a planta?
Aroeira.
Acho que eu não sei qual é em inglês. So this was woven by hand using what Adrielly called the little stick, and then it would be boiled in water with a special plant so that the net wouldn't disintegrate because it was used in like salt water and non-salt water? Fresh water. Thank you. In Portuguese, it's called sweet water. So, yeah.
E cada rede ela tem uma costura diferente, que é para um tipo de pesca diferente. Então, um nó diferente para cada pesca.
So each net is made with a different kind of weave. And so each kind of like the different knots reflect like what it is that they'll be fishing.
E eles costuravam com graveto de goiabeira. A agulha era feita com graveto de goiabeira. À mão. A agulha era feita à mão e a costura era feita à mão.
So it was the needle was made by hand too from goiabeira, from da árvore.
Sim, era o galho. Graveto é tipo um galho muito pequeno.
Tá. So a little branch, right? From the guava plant. And so that is something like this was all done by hand.
Yeah. Pode dar play no vídeo. Thank you, Pamela. We have something of the fishermen found in the water, so they brought to the museum.
So should I do this?
Yes.
So this is the time of migration. So most of the residents from Maré, like here it's in the text, it's saying where they're coming from. And most of them came from the northeast region of Brazil. So this module pays homage to the people who came from the northeast of Brazil, especially starting in the 1940s. And they migrated to Rio de Janeiro to work in the large construction sites that were taking place in the city, especially the construction of Avenida Brasil, which we saw in some of the first photographs. So this is kind of talking about how this place is a new start, and then it's naming places where people were coming from and kind of the expectations that people would have, but also hopes and memories of where they were coming from. And these are objects that people, various objects from day-to-day life of Northeastern families, along with these suitcases. And the construction in the background, that wall, is a reproduction of a technique called tawatiki, which wove wood, or usually bamboo, fixed in the ground, and then with other bamboo sticks placed horizontally, and then you fill that in with a mix of clay. And so that was how the wall was made. So these are close-ups of the objects and photographs that people brought with them of people arriving. And so this wall on this side actually began with soil from representing the different places that people had come from. And the highlight here are all of these bottles that are filled with the soil. And they're also from the hometowns of the first Northeasterners who came to Maré. But then the bottles also later became an invitation for visitors to donate soil from their hometowns to the exhibition. You want to unmute Adrielly?
Without a song. Okay, so now we're gonna see the time of the house. And is inside of the palafita. So we have real size constructions of a palafita in the middle of exhibit. So we're gonna step in and what we have inside. And I like very much of the time of the house because the exhibit and the object was made coletivamente with the community. How can we say that, Shiva?
So Adrielly is saying that it was a collective curatorship with the community, which you read a little bit about that in the chapter description.
Yeah, so the people that live and have relatives who live it in the past in the palafita, they give the statement and they say how was live in which object they have. So they say in my house they have at the time this and this object, or my grandma have this or this object. So we got together and in the reunion with a lot of leadership of the community and people who live at the time in the palafitas to say how was the day at the time. So some of these objects are donations and some are replicas. They are scenographic. I don't know if I'm using the right.
I just want, like, this is the part of the museo for me that really brings together not just the idea of curaduría colectiva, but how so much of the co-founders was put into the museo also. And in here, like there's donations from different family members, like Adriel was saying, but of some of the co-founders. So even this photograph, right, is Carmen's parents, grandparents. And so like this space is really special, I think, that in that it was built collectively, like Adriel was saying, but also it just has so much of people's lives and the kind of things that we've been talking about in terms of thinking about the day-to-day and the ordinary, but as something that we should learn.
This is the Jogo do Bicho. I think it's hard to explain what it is, Jogo do Bicho.
It's like a
But
lot of,
it's like a lot of numbers, and each numbers represents an animal. So and it is illegal in Brazil, but people still do.
yeah, very common. So this is the time of work. And in this section, you can see images of what Adrielly was talking about at the very beginning of the museum when we first entered, how people collectively built the land and Maré. And even in this first image, you can see people, right? The population filling in the land and using the skills from having worked in construction to do that labor. And so this is the time of work and labor. But across, oh yeah, so, and it's actually paired with the time of resistance. So the two times are together because without the strength of work and resistance, Marea would not exist. So the territory was and continues to be built through the collective efforts of the residents. We see that in the photographs. So we're also see all kinds of tools, right, that were used in this manual labor and also just work. And then in the time of resistance, this is images related to the permanent resistance and continuous resistance against the removal threats faced by residents and also police violence. So we also see images of workers building houses and the electrical networks. It's coming. And water and sewage systems. And here, if you stop in this picture, this is a tape recorder that residents are holding up to the politicians to record what the politicians are saying that they will do in Maré. And that's this tape recorder right here. So this is actually the same one, right? Is it the same one? Seen that?
Yes, it's the region.
It's the original. And so this is used by the leaders of the neighborhood associations to record the promises and then later be able to play them back to politicians to claim what they have been promised.
Yeah. I think it's important to say that in Brazil, after slavery, the Black population of the country we're not allowed to buy land. They are not allowed to buy land, so they have to go to the other areas like como se diz, morro.
Yeah, to the hillsides.
To the hillside. Yeah. And the area of the hillside they have a plant. That's the plant called favela. So it's because that the regional of the name, one of the stories of the region of the name favela comes from that. And you can say from the pictures, most people are people of color. So you can see the como se diz desigualdade?
Inequality.
Inequality in Brazil. So we can see also how have an habitation is very is a right in the Constitution of Brazil, but is not so easily conquest of easily conquest from the population, mostly from the northeast of the Brazil or Black people or poor people. So the evidence of repete desigualdade?
Inequality.
Inequality. The evidence of inequality we can see in the resistance and in the work time, because people have to take in what was the right of this. So sometimes they do in the not legal way, but that is not something that is a way of criminalize this group of people. So they have to fight back and make a statement that they will build the house and stay there and have the right to stay there because they have the right to have a home. So is that because it is because that this part is very important to show how people was organized and organize themselves in leaderships of communities in their constructions very in the de um jeito muito comunitário. Como é que eu diria isso? Opa.
Like in a very community-oriented way.
Yes, because they built all the houses together. That's what
So this is the file.
Pode falar.
This is the time of the market. And so there's open air markets. And we talked about how there's 16 different communities in Maré, and there's one in almost each of them. But the fairs are often places where residents can buy fresher, cheaper products. But they're also spaces for socialization and generating income and meeting up with everyone else. But here in this part, what is being highlighted are these old scales. So you can see here some of the weights that are being used, and they're quite different from today's digital scales. And then, so here's a scale, and here's another one, and these were used to weigh out the products, right? On one side, you put the weight, and on the other side, you put stuff until it evens out. I don't know if anybody's used that kind of scale before. Okay, so, but then in this side, there's also 4 different professions that are highlighted. And there's also personal objects. So here's Seu Atanásio, a tailor, and there's some objects from his shop. So the sewing machine. And then there's Seu Bento, the shoemaker.
Ele também foi presidente da Associação de Moradores. Quando...
Seu Atanásio, né?
É.
So
Como traduzir isso?
Adrielly was saying that he was also president of the Association of Residents of Maré, and he was very involved, like in the beginning of the museum, also and very dedicated to collecting kind of like the history of Maré, and like his family is still very involved. So here's another, the shoemaker, so Bent. And this is very close to the museum, right?
Yeah.
So here's some of the tools there. And then this is the barber shop, or also from Seu Joaquim. So different objects from the barber shop. And then this last corner is like a little store or a little bodega, and it's from Seu Francisco's family. So here it says the grandfather of Marielle, and his store was on Rua Oliveira in Baixa do Sapateiro, which is where the museum is. And so these are the objects that came from that store. If you open that drawer, like inside will be papers with how much people still owe. And there's, these glass bottles. It's from a totally, like a different time. And this sign, Rua Maria de Franco, came from a protest because Rio, was he a council member, Adrielly? Like,
Sim.
who broke the sign that said Rua Marielle Franco, which was put up after her death. And so then they put tons of these out, and tons, like, in protest. So the museo has one. I have one also in my office at home. But, and it says Councilwoman, Defender of Human Rights and Minorities, cowardly assassinated on 14th of March of 2018. So obviously this went there after this was already part of the museum.
Yes, they started like a protest. They made it and start to put all over the city.
So
This is the time of everyday life. So the aesthetic changes. We don't have more anymore woods. Now is concrete, and the aesthetic change that's very typical of the favelas, and it represents the very small streets and how the house is very together, and we can see the house of the neighbor, so you can hear what is happening. So this show the everyday of the people. So we have windows and doors, and uh, how can I say beco in English?
an alley.
An alley. We have all very much a lot of alleys in the slums, in the favela. So it's part of the everyday life of the people, know how to walk into the alley and and know everybody, because it is a community, so people know each other very well. um, Pode ir pra cá, pode dar play.
So this.
Posso falar sobre ele?
So this is the time of faith.
Não, eu posso falar?
Pode. Claro.
This is the time of the faith. Is the space specific. This space that Pamela is showing is specific for the religions come from the African heritage. So it's very mixed religions with Catholic, espiritismo. Existe espiritismo nos Estados Unidos?
Cara, eu procurei, mas eu acho que like spiritism. Does that ring a bell? Spiritualism.
Yes, I think it is. It's a religion close to the Allan Kardec. So we have at least 3 religions mixed, and they have we call Ubanda, that are a mixed religion that comes from spiritism or spiritismo, and the Catholics, and the beliefs of the very the other nations that come from Africa, become from Africa in the past. So and we have another religion called Candomblé. This religion is not mixed. They believe only in the Orisha, that is a representation of the goddess. So this is the necklace, the sacred necklace for protection. Every color represents a different Orisha, and that is a god that represents also a nature, an element of nature. So it's a very traditional religion in Brazil, but also a very criminalized religion in Brazil, that suffers racism and violence for fundamentalist people who associate the relations with the devil or something like that, but it's not what it is. If you want to say something more, Pamela, you can.
I think for this space, we went through a cloth. And so for me, it was always interesting that it's kind of closed off. It's kind of it's seen as a sacred space in a way. It's in a little corner of the museum, but did I write about it? I think it's also one time when we were there, it's also used. Marcelo uses it. And one time when we were there, we smelled smoke and we thought something was burning, but it turned out he had just lit some incense in there. And so like that to me kind of is a completely different way of interacting with the museum and being with the different objects, like, because they still have a life. It's not like they go to the museum and stop being used, but here in this particular space, especially, there's continuous use of the space in a religious or spiritualist practice. And then we leave also through another curtain. So this is the wall in the time of faith. And this large panel also mixes kind of the most diverse manifestations of religiosity of residents of Maré in the city of Rio de Janeiro. You can see a bunch of different objects here. And so you have to look upwards also as if in reverence to these different objects. And there's bumper stickers, there's calendars, there's little postcards. There's also statues with the eixvotos, which are like body parts, which can be left at the church. And there's also some symbols from Judaism mixed in. Like if you see, there's like a Buddha head. So, you know, it's very diverse. So I think often we have an image of Latin America as being very Catholic, but I think here the museum tries to represent the complete diversity of what is possible in terms of faith and religion. And so that's one of the things that this wall does. And in the space, there's also the boat and the image of San Pedro or St. Peter here. And he's the patron saint of fishermen. So always present kind of in these maritime processions that used to happen before the land was filled in. And so here's a close-up of the objects. And then photographs of different religious gatherings. And this is, oh, they didn't go where I thought they were gonna go. But we saw kind of the St. Peter. And so that object, which is actually the image of the saint and the little boat, they were donated by a family, and that family had worked traditionally in the fishing industry. And so because it's between the time of faith and the time of festivities that Adrielly is going to talk about, it represents at the same time like the devotion to the saint and also the celebration on his like patron saint day. So this is the time of festivities. Oh, você tá em mute. Adrielly, a gente não.
So the time of the festivity represents the ordinary confraternization, I think. Sorry. So they have representation of the carnival, the World Cup, the anniversaries, and football, and some typical regional parties like Festa do Boi Bumbá or Folia de Reis. Sorry. So the engagement, the married couple over there, and it's a very ordinary day life in the festival represents. And você pode explicar? Tô com muita vontade de tossir, Pamela. Tá me dando muita vontade de tossir. Peraí. Desculpa.
No problema. So what Adrielly was saying, that the time of festivities is not just about like big celebrations, but also kind of these ordinary everyday sorts of things. So like playing soccer, being together. There's actually the one at the top of the rainbow flag is for Pride, and Maré has one of the biggest Pride parades in the city. And so this banner also is a celebration of samba, what's now a samba school, but used to be a bloco during Carnival, or a group of people that got together to go in the streets, and it's called They Killed My Cat. And now that's a samba school in Nova Holanda. So this panel kind of reflects the way that festivities also tie the Maranhenses together and tie residents together in not just big celebrations, but also in everyday life. And this is Bumba Meu Boi, right?
Yes.
So kind of these regional celebrations that come to Maré from the Northeast and from the North that are part of life now in Rio de Janeiro as well, because they come with people, right? Not just people move, but also their traditions and culture. So, and like birthday parties, that's the Pride Parade.
The parade, the Proud Parade is the in the Maré is the large one. My mic is open. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's one of the first ones made in a favela. And then he is one of the large ones, starting in the early of 2000. So it's very important contemporary representation.
And the bottom is just, it's like a cookout, a barbecue. So there's also that.
It's funny because the picture in the World Cup show a different time of Brazil that we start to paint all of the city with yellow and green, and that is the color of como se diz bandeira? The flag. The flag of Brazil. And that after the game with the Germany that we lost so painfully, then the party started to it's not the same way. The Brazilian don't party like that anymore, but it is a very quick change in the habits of the Brazilian. So the picture shows how is 10, 20 years in the past in the culture of Brazil. This is the time of the childhood, or the time of the child, that represents the analogical plays, the toys, the games, very play with your friends in the streets, different from now that you were alone with a cell phone in your house. Is a very different way of living the childhood. So in this area is very toys, show toys made by hand, show a different way of play. And this is, como se diz pipa em inglês?
Kite. Kite.
Kite. This is very popular in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. So we have until today, kids love kite. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, they love to fly kites.
Yes. Yes, very popular. It's very popular until today. They come to the museum. Como se diz pátio, Pamela?
To the patio.
The patio of the museum. They like to go there to sneak around behind our backs and go with the bike. And we have to watch out because they can hurt themselves because they like to climb into the roof to get higher. So they love. Deu para entender, Pamela, o que eu acabei de dizer?
Sim, mas quer que eu fale? Did you guys understand that they love to go up? The kids love to go up to the rooftop, and you have to watch out because they could fall down and hurt themselves. And then these are some more pictures of children. So these are obviously older pictures. And then what Adrielly was talking about, people playing in the street and not just at home on their phone. Again, more of these games outside of the home, collectively. And then this is like your file.
Pode falar.
So this is the time of fear, and this is kind of thinking about fear and thinking about fears that intimidate us. So loneliness, sickness, unemployment, not, as kind of fears that permeate everyone's life. But then also thinking about the people who lived in the palafitas and the pictures that we saw earlier. There were other fears also, and this is kind of what it's talking about here. Hunger, the storm, the tide rising at night, and the rats that invaded the palafitas and attacked children, and also the removal of homes. And what Adrielly was saying earlier about how these were very dangerous because the water rose and made the wood wet, it would rot, and so children could fall through as they were walking in between the palafitas. And so this section is actually kind of these older fears from living in this palafita, and then to the new fears or the contemporary fears, a fear of violence, a fear of like stray bullets or lost bullets. Also the drug wars, the police operations, and the death, basically, right? And so this wall is a representation of bullet holes found around the museum. And so with Marcelo, the museum artist, youth went out and made plaster molds of these bullet holes around the museum space. And this is walls, posts. I think we even saw a picture with a post like totally damaged by bullets, and houses right around the museum. So this is produced by teenagers at the museum, and it became part of the exhibit. this is the last part, which is the time of the future. And I think one of the things that the text says here, at the Museu da Maré, fear doesn't have the last word. So that's why this long-term exhibition ends with the time of the future. Because in this time, or in this space of the museum, the past, present, and the future are mixed. So what is not yet will one day become reality, but it'll only happen if we look back to yesterday, if we respect the struggles of social movements, the conquests of residents, and their memories that resist oblivion or forgetting. And so this future is also built from today, right? From work, from courage, from engagement, from dialogue, and from tolerance. So tomorrow is also present in the daily struggle, because you have to think about what public policies we need to achieve to commit to the protection of life. So again, thinking about the theme of life that Adrielly was mentioning right at the beginning of the museum as something fundamental to like the essence of the museum, right? And to social museology. And so here in the Museu da Maré, the time of the future has already begun, and it can be transformed through our actions. So this last module is for temporary exhibitions, and the partnerships and projects that the museum develops make it possible to install new exhibition every period. And so it proposes kind of creative and questioning interventions on varied themes, and it constantly changes the environment of the time of the future. So since 2019, the future in the time of the future at the Museu da Maré is actually a door, and that's what a porta means, a door. And it's the door of the office of Councilwoman Marielle Franco in the city of Rio de Janeiro. So we saw earlier Marielle's grandfather's store. Marielle was from Maré, and she was born and raised right behind, like very close to the museum actually. And she grew up also participating in SASME, and then later as a councilwoman, she was involved with the museum, and before that as well had been involved with the museum. So the door is very symbolic, right, for it to be at the museum, but it's passing through the door. It's kind of a personal and a collective challenge. Marielle didn't pass through that door by herself, and she was accompanied by the secular, daily, and permanent struggle of the favela, and the door carries with it the strength of 46,502 votes. She was the 5th most voted councilwoman in that election, and the door is also marked by Marielle's dreams, by her joy and her welcoming way of receiving everyone, by hope and the desire for justice and equal rights. So the end of this text here says, here at the Museu da Maré, the door is memory, it's denunciation, or it's kind of, yeah, and it's a call to not forget. So its potential, its symbolic power, goes beyond its fragile materiality and invites us to permanently and restlessly build futures of justice. So you can read it in Portuguese. Você está falando, Adrielly? Está sem áudio.
Eu não disse nada.
Tá. So this is the actual door, and you can see stickers from the different campaigns that Marielle was involved with in her time as a councilwoman. Some of, like, this one was after she was assassinated, right? Marielle Ribas, so Marielle lives. Rio 2016 or Rio 2016, Jogos da Exclusão was a critique of the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro and kind of the urbanization, the rapid urbanization processes that went along with that. No and não, so a huge campaign again, like to say like no is no. So a campaign for consent, right? In relationships. There's other ones. Oh yeah, there's ones. So amar sem temer, supportive LGBT rights. Fora Temer, so Temer was a president on the extreme right. So that's the end. So we have time for like, well, we kind of ran out of time, but I hope that we have a little bit of time for Adrielly to talk very briefly about kind of the shifts for maybe like a minute or two in COVID. And thank you, Emma, for sticking it out with us. And because our class ends really soon, but if you want to talk a little bit about the kind of changes that the Museo did, and then if you all have one question, maybe we can do that.
Pamela, a gente então vai dar tempo de falar sobre a pandemia?
Deixa eles fazerem uma pergunta, eu acho.
Eu acho melhor deixar só as perguntas e aí a gente vai fazendo. Eu posso fazer um comentário breve só depois.
Tá bom. Do you all have a question that you would want to ask?
I'm curious about where the expansion, where you would like expansion to happen. Like, is it in that future area so that there is more space for these rotating exhibits, or is it because it seems like the 12 other sections is important. So I don't know if you would be like adding to those or adding more to this like liminal space that we saw at the end.
Eu não entendi a pergunta, Pamela.
Ela está perguntando se você tem algum lugar, alguma parte, algum tempo, alguma parte do museu que você gostaria de expandir, o que vocês pensam, tipo, aonde seria um ponto de expansão, sabe? Se é o tempo do futuro, ou que é um espaço liminal, like a liminal space you said, Tess, right? Ou se é nos outros tempos, alguma parte que tem algum não sei, incentivo para expandir.
The exhibition is not permanent. They have the exhibit is Pamela, eu vou falar em português e você traduz, pode ser assim? Acho melhor.
Pode.
Okay. So I'm gonna say in Portuguese and Pamela it's gonna translate for me because I think it's very specific an answer, so I cannot find the words to say it. A exposição é de longa duração, ela não é permanente. Então, ela pode ser modificada ao longo do tempo várias vezes. Por exemplo, o tempo da fé é o que mais se modifica, porque vários objetos são trocados. O Marcelo, que é o cenógrafo, ele está sempre trocando os objetos da exposição e, às vezes, algumas coisas saem de lá para conservação, higienização e voltam. Você traduz essa parte e eu vou falar mais, tá?
Tá. So it's longa duração, so it's a long-term exhibit, but not necessarily permanent. And for example, the objects in the Tempo da Fé, or the Time of Faith, are the ones that are constantly being switched out. So Marcelo, the one we were talking about, he will change objects out, and also when objects are removed for cleaning and for conservation, they're taken and then put back, so things change.
O tempo do futuro é um tempo, por exemplo, que já mudou várias vezes, é o tempo que mais mudou, porque o futuro é incerto, né? O futuro está sempre mudando, né? Tipo, eu estou falando aqui no presente, e cada palavra que eu falo, ela já se tornou passado. Então, como o futuro é uma coisa bastante efêmera, assim, tipo, ele está daqui a pouco para a gente alcançar, ele é uma coisa que vai mudando sempre. Então, já foi uma maquete, já foi a própria planta, a favela, já ficou no futuro, já teve fotos de líderes mulheres da Maré, e agora a Porta da Marielle. Então, o tempo do futuro ele é o tempo que mais muda no museu.
So, foi muito, né? Okay. The time of the future, for example, is the time that's changed the most. Because also, like Adrielly, her example was the things that I'm saying right now are already in the past because I just said them. They're in the past. But the future is the one that changes the most because it's the most uncertain. It's ephemeral. And some of the examples of the time of the future are that it has already been like a, what is that called in architecture? You know, the design thing, like not a blueprint, the one where they build it out of pieces of wood and stuff. A model, yes, like it's already been a model. It was also the plant that Adrielly was talking about. There was an installation of a branch of the favela plant. There were also pictures of women from Maré there. So it's the one that's changed the most, the Tempo do Futuro.
Eu acho que é isso, assim, a exposição ela é feita coletivamente e ela está sempre passível de mudança, porque os objetos eles são menos importantes do que a narrativa. Mesmo que o objeto ele seja musealizado porque ele está lá dentro, não que a gente não vá conservá-los, mas eles são bem menos importantes do que a história que eles estão contando. Então, se a gente quiser incluir outras histórias ou amplificar algumas histórias, a gente vai acrescentar ou tirar algum objeto.
So this, because the exposition is made collectively, the exhibition is made collectively, and some, like the objects are less important than the narrative that gets told, than the story that gets told. So if we want to highlight a particular part of the narrative, then we'll change the objects to put in something else there. And that's part of the collective nature of the exhibition. Consegui tudo. Você falou outra coisa.
Eu disse que, como é construído coletivamente, a gente pode incluir outras narrativas também, né?
And because it's constructed collectively, that we can also include other narratives. So thanks, Tess, for your question. Our class is over, but I think this was awesome. It turned out better than I thought it would. And so I'm really grateful to Global Perspectives, to Emma for being with us for so long, and to Adrielly and the Museu da Maré for being able to host this virtual visit. And the Museo actually prepared the video for our class specifically. So I think we are very, very grateful for the opportunity to be able to see the museum after you guys had read a little bit, but to have this experience and to also be mediated through the museum with Adrielly was just really incredible for us, especially being so far away. So thank you, Adrielly. Doutora Ribas.
Thank you, everyone.
You can follow the museum on Instagram it's at Museu da Maré, MUSEUDAMARE.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.